But the headline is North Carolina serious? What UNC does with basketball coach Hubert Davis will tell us. And the assertion is that Davis might not be a top 10 coach in the league. So I'll let you, in your words, rather than me, explain what you mean by it for the people who have not read it.
Yeah, Adam, look, I think programs hire coaches for all different kinds of reasons. And Hubert Davis, being a first-time head coach, to get the North Carolina job, he got that position because that's who Roy wanted and because North Carolina likes to hire coaches who are, quote, inside the family. And, look, I'm okay with that. You let them see how they do. You let them grow. All that's fine. We're 4 years in now. I think we have a pretty good idea of what kind of program Hubert Davis runs, what kind of team he puts on the floor. And if North Carolina people, not just the fans, but the administration, are looking at that and saying, yeah, this is what we want, this is what we think the program should be, well, I think that's crazy. I think that's absolutely insane. North Carolina is one of the biggest, most important, best brands in all of college sports and really maybe all of sports, period. And I don't think North Carolina should be settling for these results for any reason other than if they believe Hubert Davis is a great coach, if they believe he's an elite coach, and this is just, a bad year, a bad stretch, whatever, and that he's going to have the capability to get this fixed and immediately next year, well, okay, fine. Keep him, give him one more year. But if they're just sort of giving him one more year because they think it's the right thing to do or they think it's the fair thing to do or because it's what Roy would want or any of the sappy nonsense that you might hear, well, that's the wrong way to run your program. And I believe North Carolina should have an elite coach. If you don't believe that's Hubert Davis after 4 years of seeing his team on the floor, then make a change and hire somebody outside the Carolina family.
Dan Wolken is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. Real quick to those points, because I think those are all correct points, but I keep asking this question of everybody I've talked to and even when I'm just opining about what I saw Saturday night, because I admit that it feels like that was more the micro of what the macro really is. It feels like Duke is going this way, meaning up, and Carolina is either staying where they are or sliding back based on the result of that game. But Carolina had won 5 of the last 6 from Duke. And you're right about the 2022 Final Four run, which, by the way, began with not began with it, but it was punctuated by that win over Duke on the ultimate senior night, spoiling Mike Krzyzewski's last home game and then beating them again in the Final Four. And Hubert Davis will forever be legendary because of that, although Caleb Love probably and Brady Manick probably had the most to do with it. So that was like a hot streak. But they were a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament last year. So I just wonder how much of of what you wrote and what you feel is skewed by an ugly, ugly game on Saturday.
Yeah, I understand what you're asking and the point there, but I don't really care that much about the micro. I mean, yes, it was a good opportunity because of how that game played out for me to write a column, but it's not like I just sort of woke up Saturday night and was like, oh, North Carolina got to make a change. I mean, I don't think Hubert Davis is very good. And I haven't thought he's very good for a while. Yes, I know Carolina was the number 1 seed last year. I thought they were a bit of a fraudulent number 1 seed most of the season when I looked at how they played. And, honestly, they had some pretty questionable losses last year. I remember that one game at Georgia Tech. I mean, that just sort of stands out for me. Like, this is not a game you should be losing. And then they got beat by Alabama, who was a better team.
Yes.
In the end, So, I get that they were a 1 seed last year. They won the mythical ACC regular season title, which don't email me. I know it doesn't exist.
I'm with you. Yeah.
But I just thought they were kind of okay last year, despite where they ended up in the tournament. The year before, disaster. The year before that, made the national title game, but a month left in the season, they're on the bubble. So I have all these data points in my mind, and I have just made up my mind as an observer and as a columnist that I don't think Hubert Davis is a very good college basketball coach. That's just my opinion.
Dan Wolken is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. And look, I think, first of all, there's a lot of people that share that opinion. And you say some very nice things about Hubert, and I agree with all of them. I mean, he is as good a human being as you're going to find in the sport. I could argue that he's too good a person for the sport. I know the guy up the road a little bit well, John Shire as well, and I'm friends with somebody on the Duke coaching staff. I know the kind of people that they've got as well. But I think your other point about there's too much in the family stuff, I think there's a lot of people that are coming to that realization about UNC, that it seems like it is a haven for, hey, you used to play here, why don't you come here and coach here too, without necessarily having the chops to do it.
Well, look, I understand when you go from, Dean, and then there's sort of that interim period with Guthridge, and then, the Doherty thing. I mean, Doherty was a real hire. Like Doherty had done well at another school. So okay, fine. It makes sense. Didn't work out. The Roy thing worked out brilliantly, and Roy was an elite coach before he got to North Carolina. So all that stuff makes sense, but there does come a point where you have to balance it with the reality of what happens in coaching. And yeah, if there was some great coach out there who was killing it, who had that background in North Carolina, who had played for Roy or played for Dean or whatever, I could get on board with that, but that person doesn't exist as far as I can tell. So when you limit yourself in coaching hires to somebody who's familiar with the school or somebody who's an alum or whatever, I just never buy into that stuff. I think it makes people feel good for 5 minutes,
right?
But it doesn't really matter that much.
Mm-mm.
And I also think, to North Carolina's credit, and people can feel however they want about the Belichick situation, but I feel like that hire made a statement largely from the new president that they don't have to pretend like they're better than anybody else, or that, it's about, these high-minded ideals that people want to associate with the North Carolina brand. This is about winning. And the Belichick hire, I don't know how well it's going to work, but they're putting a lot of resources into football.
Yes.
They hired somebody who's a very serious football person. Obviously there's questions about, the age and not being in college and all that stuff. But you hired Bill Belichick. That's amazing. And so I just kind of feel like North Carolina can be on the verge of that in basketball, because it's a much more attractive basketball job than it is a football job. And if they fire Hubert a month from now, I feel like they would get an unbelievably good coach.
Well, they could. It's interesting. Like a Nate Oates at Alabama, or I can't even. I'm so far away from the day-to-day covering of college basketball. Shaka Smart at Marquette. I don't even know if those guys would take the job right now. Not because it's North Carolina is. I agree with you. It is the best job in college basketball. It's the best college basketball brand. Duke notwithstanding, Duke might be second on that list, but I think Duke comes with other challenges, right? And obviously I don't think they're in the market for a coach anyway. But I do think that it would be interesting to see if that job came open, how hard it would be to fill a job where the standard is winning a national championship or failure, because that's what it does appear. I don't feel like you've got that at Alabama or Auburn or Tennessee or Florida or Texas or in so many places where you've got some of the best teams in the country and some great coaches. So I just think that North Carolina might be – it's sort of like taking the Alabama coaching job. Kalen DeBoer, I'm sure, is a great coach, but I'm sure this year going whatever they went wasn't great fun considering the fishbowl that you've got to live in. Let me just ask you, because I know you real quick about Bill Belichick. What was your initial reaction to the hire when North Carolina brought Bill to that press conference?
Well, I tried to reserve an initial reaction just because it was so kind of out of left field.
Yes.
And then obviously took place within, a couple days. It got done. And I don't know, like the more I thought about it, it was just to me like, why not? What do you have to lose? The Mac Brown era did not really do it for me. Part two. I thought it was very, very mediocre. North Carolina football has long been, the sleeping giant
right.
that everybody thinks can be great because of, the brand and the location and all that stuff. I'm not sure that that's true, but also like, look at the ACC. Are you telling me that SMU coming from the American Athletic Conference can make the college football playoff in year one in the ACC, and Bill Belichick can't, outcoach, Pat Narduzzi and Mario Cristobal? Like, give me a break. Like, of course he can.
Yeah.
So I'm totally on board with it. Give it a shot. Who knows how long it'll last? Don't worry about that. Just try to get a couple good years out of it, and maybe that transforms your program.
Yeah, like I've looked at it as, to me, it's transactional in both ways. I think it's Bill using the university to maybe prove a point to the NFL, or maybe to prove a point that college is becoming more like pro, and the university's using Bill Belichick maybe to transform its football program into more of a national model. I don't think either side is necessarily in love with the other. There's nothing familial about it, nothing collegial about it. To me, it's you just hired a football coach, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Dan Wolken, USA Today, at Dan Wolken on Twitter. Thank you very much for the time, man. I'll talk to you very soon.
Okay, thanks, Adam.
You got it. Dan Wolken here.